The Ford Mondeo debuted in the US as the Ford Fusion back in 2012, but has been known in Europe since 2014, and we got it in 2015. And after only 4 years, along with the rest of the passenger Ford line, he suddenly left our market. However, stocks of Mondeo on the secondary market will not run out for a long time. And that's not bad. Of the entire extensive range of engines produced by us Mondeo, only 2 were released. And if the absence of liter 3-cylinder turbo engines does not upset, then the lack of at least one diesel engine does not please. However, the popular gasoline aspirated 2.5, 77% of cars, can mainly be blamed for gluttony. It does not deny itself excessive fuel consumption. But with reliability, everything is not bad, because under the name Duratec hides the unit of the Mazda MZR family, known since the beginning of the century, with conventional distributed injection. Moreover, unlike a colleague on a Mazda 6 car of the second generation, where there were deformation of the retaining rings and displacement of the piston pins, engines with the Ford registration have passed the unenviable fate. Less than 350 to 400,000 kilometers before the overhaul, the motor runs only with a careless attitude towards itself. For example, at gas stations anywhere, with which gentle neutralizers, €600 complete with the collector, will not agree, the crumb from them will quickly sentence a disposable aluminum block. The chain and the timing drive, to the envy of purely European motors, rarely serves less than 200 to 250,000 kilometers. But if you give a voice, do not pull with the replacement. In a critically worn state, the chain breaks, ensuring that the pistons meet the valves. The revolutions floating after a run of 50 to 60,000 kilometers hint that it would be nice to clean the throttle assembly, otherwise problems with starting will follow. If the conscience of the damper is clear, you can try to replace the software in the computer. The valve cover, according to a long-standing Mazda tradition, is capable of pouring oil into the candle wells. And the oil heat exchanger is weak with gaskets. Leaks occur after a milestone of 100,000 kilometers. If, after 150,000 kilometers, oil appetite has grown, then stuck piston rings or hardened oil seals are to blame. But the oil level in this engine needs an eye and an eye. At low pressure, the crankshaft liners immediately suffer. There are no hydraulic lifters. Every 100,000 kilometers it is necessary to check and, if necessary, manually set the gap. And do not confuse with the clatter of valves the sounds made by the flaps of the intricate intake manifold after 120 to 150,000 kilometers. This is perhaps the least successful part of the motor. The collector, €200, has to be changed entirely. And phase shifters are capable of adding their own sounds to the orchestra after 100 to 120,000 kilometers. The clutch is not more durable than the 2-liter turbo engine, 22% of cars. It is also based on the Mazda aspirated, but changed, unsuccessfully at first, because until 2013 the engine suffered from the destruction of the pistons from detonation. Then we finalized both the hardware and the control program, after which runs of 500 to 350,000 kilometers ceased to be a curiosity. But direct injection hasn't gone anywhere. The valves still suffer from the burden of accumulating soot, especially noticeably betraying their dissatisfaction with the twitches of an unheated engine. And the most unpleasant thing is that after 120 to 140,000 kilometers the steel exhaust manifold can crack. If you don't hear this in time and literally sniff it out, the fragments will injure the blades of the Borg-Warner KOZ turbocharger. And it costs almost €600 in the original, although it is possible to find a cartridge separately for €220. And it is better to replace the collector itself with the non-original one, €170, made of trouble-free cast iron. It is strange that Ford engineers themselves did not think of such a solution. Transmission. Do not look for all-wheel drive versions. We did not sell such ones. And with the choice of transmission, you don't have to rack your brains. We officially did not have the capricious robot power shift from GetRack, as on European versions. And the non-alternative 6-speed hydraulic automatic 6F35 jointly developed by Ford and GM, although a relative of the infamous 6T30/6T40 unit from Chevrolet Cruze cars, is much more reliable. The unit is also sensitive to the oil level and does not like racing in a cold state, up to kicks, which over time were treated with new versions of ECU firmware. And oil contaminated with wear products of friction linings must be renewed at least after 45,000 kilometers. But in general, there are fewer problems than with the GM unit. And running more than 200,000 kilometers is not the limit. After all, Ford began to use the box a couple of years later, already in a modernized form. And quieter settings did not have the best effect on accelerating dynamics, but beneficially on survivability. Even the recall of Mondeos sold in Russia from 2015 to 2019 happened for an absurd reason. The end of the gear lever cable could be damaged, due to which the transmission could not be switched to the desired mode. Body. A crooked door hinge or a gap between the hood and the front lining in early copies of 2015 is often a sign not of an accident, but of the roughness of the Sevolosk assembly. The paint is traditionally rather weak, it loses its luster, it is rubbed at the points of contact between bumpers and wings, and chips from stones are not uncommon. The best remedy for baldness is to stick a protective film on hot spots, and at the same time at the corners of the trunk lid. Adaptive diode headlights, as much as €1,500 each, for rich versions at first turned out to be not at all a reason for pride. They went out due to glitches in the software, which caused a revocable campaign for flashing the control module in 2016. But then I had to arrange a second one. The headlights began to wink playfully on the go due to false positives of the auto mode. Reprogramming also helped. And the complete clarity of the look was established only with the advent of modernized diode headlights in 2018. Good visibility is not always promised by heating threads in the windshield, €500. The system may refuse assistance due to the fault of the wiring harnesses or the climate control unit, which, along with the multimedia system, is also prone to failure. And if the electric drives of seats, windows, or mirrors refuse to obey, the comfort unit is to blame. However, you rarely have to change it. Usually rebooting by turning off the power or updating the firmware usually helps. Intricately installed between the rear window and the roof panel, an additional brake light can leak, stains will decorate the roof upholstery. And the front panel is deformed when parking in the sun. It is supported only by 3 spacers and sags between them. Dealers tried to correct the miscalculation by removing the windshield and installing additional supports, but the residual deformation of the plastic is still preserved. Suspension. The adapted suspension is not bad not only with the 15-centimeter clearance, but also with survivability. Like the previous Mondeo, bushings and stabilizer struts wear out after 50 to 70,000 kilometers, €25. Rear shock absorbers, for €120 branded and from 100 eminent analogs, are accepted to flow earlier than before, after 70 to 100,000 kilometers. But the front shock absorbers, original €100 each and substitutes from €80 each, began to withstand 1.5 times longer, up to 100 to 140,000 kilometers. And most importantly, the support bearings of the front struts stopped suddenly failing. In addition, the longitudinal traction was excluded from the design of the rear suspension, which received an integral arm, and the problems with the rapid failure of its silent blocks disappeared. The remaining joints rarely require revision before 130 to 150,000 kilometers. Electrician. But the replacement of the hydraulic booster with the Euro was not so successful. For some reason, the module was fixed on the rail with 3 aluminum bolts, which corrode and break with time and reagents. If you do not immediately notice something is wrong, the drive belt may break, which comes exclusively assembled with the entire mechanism, €1,550. In 2018, they finally guessed to replace aluminum with steel, but they did not organize service campaigns. It makes sense to proactively update the fasteners on their own. If the Euro refuses to turn the wheels in good condition, resetting the ECU will help. The rear wheels not fully unlocked by the electric handbrake and the subsequent overheating of the brakes in cars older than 2017 are also on the conscience of the electronic brains. The failures were fixed by another update of the ABS block program.